Hello, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, where we continue our deep dive into the Circle G. Today's episode, remembering the Circle G. And we're going to get to that just as soon as we listen to this song.
The lights came down on Vegas gold. July heat, a crown retold. Applause like thunder, stars align. But one true friend was not in line. A telegram, a quiet grace. From 12 years deep, a loyal face. I read your words, they calmed the flame. In all that noise, I spoke your name. I wish you could have been here, Gary. The velvet night, the roaring crowd. But in my heart, your voice was steady. A whisper soft, a faith unbowed. 4 more weeks, this fire will fade. I'll find my way back through the haze to Graceland's porch where silence sings and friendship wears no stage or wings. The suits, the gifts, the famous hands, they cheered the king, they made demands. But in the mirror doubt would stare, and only you knew what was there. I wrote you lines in trembling ink, not for the press, not for the drink, just for the man who saw me whole, beyond the glitter, past the road. Say hello to everyone, I'll be home when this is done. The curtain falls, the echo fades, but you remain my serenade. 4 more weeks, this fire will fade. I'll find my way back through the hay to Graceland's porch where silence sings. Friendship wears no stage or wings.
Welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, where we're going to continue looking at the Circle G, remembering the Circle G. And Carolyn's asking, so I create these songs with AI. This is amazing. I write these lyrics from the scripts that I've written for the videos. So if you go back and watch some of my videos, these songs are retelling those same stories, but now as a song. And then the AI adds the music and the performance. But the AI depends on the emotional resonance that you feed it with the lyrics. Hi, Pat. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Hi, Terry. Thank you for coming. And so if you guys were here for the last episode, you know that we've seen Elvis get married along with some of his friends, and he's brought all of his married friends to live in a circle of trailers, which today we might think of as something on the low end of society. You know, that they are cheaper mobile homes, that they're not as permanent as a permanent house. But to Elvis, they were brand new. Everything about them was brand new. Only time in his life he ever lived anywhere that was absolutely brand new, and he was the first one to use everything. And he loved those trailers in that entire village. And he brought everyone that he loved to live there with him, to try to insulate out the world, those who were pressuring him. And we've seen some of those pressures. They included members of his family having recently passed away, his own marriage to Priscilla, obviously the changing dynamics within the group because of all the other marriages. He soon finds out that he has a child on the way. He's making movies that he's not really happy with. He's recording soundtracks for those movies he's even less happy with. He's got money men that are pushing him to, return to work at all times. And he's got his own ambivalence about where his career should go next. He knows what's wrong, but he doesn't quite know what to do to fix it yet. And he's not really going to get there until the 1968 Singer Comeback Special. So he's going to continue in the thinking that he is in at this moment. But right now he's getting a break from all that. Hi, Marion. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Hi, Keith. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Hope I haven't missed anybody. Chat's moved a little bit fast here. But what Jerry Schilling had to say about this time was on a more realistic, simple, loving basis, being off the road, being away from Hollywood, just getting down to the bare essentials. I think it was one of the times that Elvis enjoyed just being a human being. It was a great time in our lives. So Jerry saw that this was a very special time. Now, Jerry was a little bit younger than Elvis. He was only 25 about this time. And Priscilla said it wasn't unusual to see him walking around the property, knocking on doors, waking everybody up, or checking on the horses in the early morning hours. So we talked yesterday about how Elvis was a nocturnal person, and he would mostly live his life at night when most of us were asleep, and then he'd be asleep during the day when most of us were awake. He'd get up around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he'd go to bed about 6 a.m. But here, he's up early in the morning, because that's when the life on the barn starts. The animals are on a sun schedule. Depends when the sun is up as to when the animals are going to be the most active and the most agreeable. And of course, early in the morning, they're going to want to be fed. So you can't get away from this rhythm of the animals once you're on this ranch. A lot of cows, a lot of horses. And they've all got to be taken care of. And Elvis isn't personally taking care of them, but he's feeling their rhythm. And so now he's up in the early morning hours before everybody else. He's knocking on those doors, telling them they've been asleep too long. And they need to all get out there so they can all ride around together and enjoy this wonderful, probably sunny day. And we saw yesterday that Elvis had started to build things around the property so that they could have fun. And let's take a look at some pictures that I've got to put ourselves back on the ranch. And here we can see a map of the ranch. And this was a map that we've talked in previous episodes that somebody bought the ranch for investment purposes. And this was one of the plans that was submitted for the investment purposes. They were going to refurbish the area, and you can see the lake in the middle. You can even see, it's difficult on this map because it's small, but you can see on this map where the bridge is. You can also see at the top, there's something that looks like an L. That's the stables. And then there's something weird about this because it says that this little square that's up by the L, that's tucked away in the trees, that's the cottage. But we've seen pictures of the cottage, and it's in a parking lot, and we can see a parking lot that's just below the lake. So I don't know if the plan was to move the cottage, or the cottage is really back there, and I just never realized it, and that parking lot that we see isn't on the main road where I'm thinking it is, because I've only seen the pictures that you guys have seen with me. Right? But we can get a little bit closer into this map. We'll do a little bit of a blow up here, and then we can see a little better. And you can see that the lake, they've named it Dancing Waters. And you can see where a cross is, and I'm assuming that's where the cross was. Again, I'm not sure. It says Amazing Grace Park. And you can see at the bottom, it says Barbecue Pit. And that's what we were talking about yesterday. So I see some people in the comments are talking about Carolyn Loves Elvis Forever and Elvis History, two of the Elvis channels that everybody should be watching and subscribe to, putting out good content, as well as Emma's channel, Just a Girl Who Loves Elvis. Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate seeing you here. But everybody, check out Elvis History. Check out Carolyn Loves Elvis Forever. But before you leave this page, make sure that you like and that you subscribe so that you know when the next episode is going to be. And make sure you hit the notification button so that YouTube has a better chance of telling you, because we all know YouTube likes to make it very difficult to know when your programs are on, especially the live ones. So hit that notification button. Tell all your friends that you know that love Elvis to check out Hillbilly Cat History and join us here for these live broadcasts so they can learn more about Elvis too. And be sure to comment and chat, because that's what YouTube loves. They love the interaction, and I love it too. So thank you everybody for all that you do for me. And we can see on this map that next to the lake, they were going to build a restaurant and a stage. So there would have been some performances, and you could have gotten something to eat. And then at the top, we can see a corral. We can see the stables. And we can see that weird spot for the honeymoon cottage, which I'm not sure if it's historical or that's just where they were going to put it. Now, yesterday, I said that no one with the vision to turn this into something that would really entertain a lot of people and that you'd really be able to, get a profit out of. Something that made it worth the journey more than just seeing the lawn. Well, this is to me, a very feeble attempt at that. They put a restaurant and a stage in. That's the very, very least that I would do. There is just so much potential here. And yet they got the investment. They got somebody to buy, some people to invest based on this plan. So is it possible to save the ranch? I think it is, but not with this plan. This is an old plan. It's already failed. We have to move on to something else. But that gives you an idea what the ranch looks like. And here we see the cottage. And all the other pictures we've seen of the cottage, the windows were boarded up. So this is an interesting picture because you can see windows. You can see the glass in the windows, and there's curtains behind them. Grass is a little bit unkempt, but nothing that any lawn service couldn't handle with one trip and just their regular equipment. And we can see that same house behind this 10-foot high fence. And so we've talked about the 10-foot high fence that Elvis had erected around the property. Well, you're looking at it. That's it right there. And you can see a Circle G Ranch pickup truck. Perhaps one of the very pickup trucks he bought. Although this one looks a little bit older, like maybe it was already on the ranch and they just painted the symbol onto the side. Not sure. Can't see who's driving it. And it may just be parked there because it kind of looks like nobody's there. And it's in front of the fence. But you can also see a blue car, a large sedan, very 70s looking, or 60s, because this is 60s. But it's getting into that 70s elongated, squarish look with that particular car. So, of course, I'm not sure when this picture was taken. Maybe it was taken after Elvis didn't own it and this fence was still up. I don't know how long the fence lasted. Don't really know anything other than these pictures that we've seen. Keith's saying that they need some big names to push this venture. They only need one big name, Keith. One that has enough money to do the whole thing. The issue, part of the issue here is that it's outside of the county that Graceland is in. So apparently that had some kind of legal ramifications, according to Joel, who runs Graceland. And it makes it more difficult for people to invest in the property. I don't really understand the specifics of it. But there's reasons that nobody wants to invest in this. I think a lot of it has to do with lack of vision, like I've said. But I don't have this kind of money, so my opinion really doesn't count. Because I'm not the kind of person who can make this thing happen. That has to be somebody who's really willing to put a lot on the line. Or who is such a great talker with others and trustworthy enough that he's going to be able to raise that kind of money. And then it's not just about the money. You've got to see the whole project forward. And construction is its own huge thing. If you've never done any construction, oh, it's terrible. But if you've got good foremen, then maybe you can make it through. But that's some of the challenges that anyone who's going to try to make this property go, I mean, they've got to face these things. And it's going to be at a nearly Graceland Disney kind of level if you really want to be able to attract people. If you're not directly connected to Graceland or EPE itself. And then, of course, they're very trademark protective, especially in anything that's in the nearby area, especially anything that's going to be there forever. You know, it's connected to a piece of property that's near them. So they'll maintain their vigil. And Keith's saying that it looks like from the cars, it might have been after EP left. Yeah, from that one car. It's not sure. And Pat's saying Circle G would get a huge tourist attraction. I think it might for a year, Pat. maybe two. But if there's nothing there, and then other people say, "Hey, we just went out and had a picnic on the lawn," I don't know how many people that would attract. But then again, when they're at Graceland, they're just walking them around inside. So I don't, I don't know. Obviously, I know nothing about this business, and that's why I'm not running it. And Marriott's saying, I would love to spend my holidays there. I'd have fantastic dreams. It does seem right for a camp. Here they would call it something like a KOA campground, which is a business that runs basically spots for you to bring in a trailer, an RV, a recreational vehicle, but they also have some cabins, and they usually have some tent spaces, and then you would come and basically do something, which I could see that being huge here, because then you would have a base to go and do your things at Graceland. Now, Graceland might be against it because they have the hotel next to them, but as my understanding is that during the heavy weeks, that hotel's already booked anyway for the week before, the week after, the week of, plus a few other times during the year. So I'm not sure that they would really care that much. I don't know that the county that it's in would zone something like that, but wouldn't that be great if you could go and stay in a cabin there? Because that's basically what he was doing at the very beginning. This cottage is really kind of a cabin thing. And Pat's saying if they put horses on the Circle G, you would see a lot of tourists. Right, and then you would have this big barn, and maybe you could park next to it. And then even if you didn't stay there, you could come out to see the horses, but there would be a lot of activity there because there would be people there. And Keith say not to bring this up, but Priscilla always gets the cash. Well, you're way behind on that one, Keith, because it's been 3 years since she's been in on that EPE gravy train. Now, she's got some, but it's a very limited amount compared to what she used to get. She's basically been pushed away from all that. So if she wants to get cash, she's got to make her own deals now outside of EPE, and those have not been working out so well for her. And Terry's saying, so true, Marianne. Will also be nice to meet up with other Elvis fans like yourself. That's right. It'd be a real community. Colleen saying she'd love to see some horses there. And Pat's agreeing with Keith in the hopes that one day karma is catching up. I think it is catching up with her right at this very moment. But to look at some more of these pictures and get into today's story, here we can see the bridge. So we've talked about this bridge in several other episodes. And we just saw it on the map, so you have a better idea where it was. Now on that map, I'm not sure where the trailers were. We saw where the barbecue pit was. I'm assuming the trailers were somewhere near that barbecue pit because that kind of makes the most sense to me. Maybe where that parking lot is, because they would have had to put concrete pads in or level certain parts of that area. But again, I don't know. And here we see Elvis, and he's on the rising sun. Wearing it looks like a black jacket in this one, and some black chaps. Now we've seen him wear white chaps with white fringe. So he has multiple outfits, multiple cowboy outfits to live out this cowboy dream. I'm assuming those are white boots that he's wearing, white and black. They might just have some mud on them. And this is not the clearest of pictures, but the saddle looks pretty nice on this horse on Rising Sun. It looks like a very nice saddle. And Pat's saying how gorgeous. All right, now we've come back to the barbecue pit, which is on the south side of the ranch, like we saw on the south side of the lake. And this barbecue pit has his initials on it, like we talked about yesterday, E and P. And there was also a discussion about whether it looked like this anymore. And this is a picture of it after that other picture was taken. I don't know. I think this picture was taken somewhere around 2009, but I'm not actually sure. But it doesn't look anything like it used to. So it would need some major repair if that hasn't already been done. I don't know what they did or did not do with the 2014 investment. Terry saying, beautiful horse, the rising sun. And Carolyn saying that she wishes he could have kept the ranch. She thinks it would have been good for him. But we haven't got to the end of the story yet, Carolyn. So we don't know what the circumstances were, but he decided to get rid of it yet. In this picture, you can see the cross. And there are these buildings around it. So I'm not clear if this is where the cross is on that map, or whether the cross has fallen down and been stored over in this area, but it's standing. So maybe these buildings have been moved over here at some point. Not sure what's going on here, but this is on the ranch. And this is the stables. And you can see an old truck in front of them. That truck was probably there when Elvis was there. And I'm fairly certain these stables were there when he was there. Just not in this state of disrepair. They would have, of course, been in much nicer condition. I'm not positive about that. I just kind of think that they would have been, because they transferred all those horses over, so they had to keep them somewhere. And there were already horses that were being kept here, because Elvis spent the night here for three nights before he bought the property. And they rode horses. He did bring horses from Graceland, but the offer had been, hey, ride our horses and treat everything like it's yours. Hi, Regina. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Now, this is a surprising picture, at least it was to me. This is a swimming pool. I don't know if the swimming pool was there when Elvis was there, if he had it installed, if it was already there, if it was built later as part of something else. In terrible shape when this picture was taken. But I had no idea there was a swimming pool on the property. There is references to them swimming, but I assume that was in the lake, since I don't think I've ever seen a reference to a swimming pool. Have any of you guys ever heard of a swimming pool at Circle G? And here we can see the diving board, the high dive, which if it was there when Elvis was there, I'm sure he jumped off of it. And it sure looks like a 60s high dive. Just from the way it's constructed and the... Now, how could I say that one high dive looks like a certain era? It just has this look of 60s construction that I can't verbalize, because I'm not an engineer and I don't know enough about construction, but it's got all metal tubes that they look just like the playground equipment when I was a kid, and almost all of that playground equipment had been made in the late 60s. I was in the 70s and 80s, but they tended to keep this playground equipment for 20 or 30 years. And you could tell the difference between playground equipment that was made in the 80s and what had been made earlier. But again, I don't really know. So if any of you guys have any comments or opinions, everybody always feel free to speak up with your comments, your opinions, your thoughts. I have no special training in Elvis. I don't have any qualifications to talk about Elvis in any way. I just get on the microphone and I say what I'm going to say. And I look at original source documentation with you guys, and we come to conclusions. Terry's saying that he never knew there was a swimming pool. Thank you, Terry. I know that you know a lot about Elvis, so that makes me feel like I haven't missed something. And Pat's saying you would think if Elvis owned it, someone would have kept up with it. You would think of that about Dolan Street too, right? At Vernon's house, and there's so many other Elvis locations. Trey at Globetrotting with Trey, great channel. I should definitely check it out. He just finds location after location after location that's either completely gone or destroyed, or there's very few that are still intact. And Colleen's saying that this looks like the high dive that Anne Margaret pushed him off of. Right. Which would have been in the 60s. Hi, Pamela. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. So we now see one of the implements of fun that Elvis was using on the ranch, and this is a hunting bow. And we're going to come back to it in just a second after we hear from Joe Esposito. And Joe says, on weekends, we threw giant barbecues. The wives prepared all the food, except for the meat, which I cooked on an open grill. We had great times. Elvis felt very comfortable in his own little ranch world and usually hated being torn from it. So the wives prepared a meal, except for the meat, and Joe was the guy who was mostly using the grill, that barbecue, according to Joe. So it had the initial ZP, but it was JE that was doing all the cooking. Now, I'm sure that Elvis probably cooked a few pieces on it, especially a few of the beginning ones, the first ones. But then, like a lot of the things that he got into, probably tired of that because it's not a huge amount of fun to cook food for other people. It's a little bit of fun, and he probably sucked that bit of fun out, and then he probably preferred to eat, and then he wanted to get back to the horse riding and the other fun, like this bow, for a bow and arrow set that we're seeing on screen. Now, Priscilla said on Sundays, we had picnics, and all the girls chipped in on potluck. We rode horses, held skeet shooting contests, and combed the lake for turtles and snakes. There was fun, laughter, and a lot of camaraderie. So Priscilla, she remembers the same thing Joe remembers, is that the wives made all the food, but Priscilla has a few more of that, the details around that, and that each woman made one dish, perhaps two dishes. Priscilla doesn't say how many dishes, but when you do a potluck, it's typically one dish each. And then they would all bring out their dish, and then they would have the meat that Joe had grilled. And the skeet shooting is like a target shooting with guns, with firearms. And of course, we all know that Elvis loved firearms. And they looked for turtles and snakes. Now, I don't know what they did with the turtles and snakes. I've read before that Elvis would snake hunt, so perhaps they were snake hunting. I don't believe they were turtle hunting. People rarely shoot turtles that I've ever heard of. But Priscilla doesn't make clear what they're doing with these turtles or snakes. But she does remember fun, laughter, and friendship. She remembers a lot of friendship. And you got to wonder what happened to all that friendship, because 10 years later, this is 1967. In 1977, when Elvis passes away, nearly all of these people completely split. Right? Priscilla and Jerry continue a relationship, as friends into the future. I believe Joe had some interaction with them, but he seemed to me as an outsider to be also outside, so I can't really tell, but Joe seemed to do a lot of independent projects. He was brought in by himself on a lot of things, and then he did some other things in groups, but the others had little to no contact with Priscilla after that, right? So here, 10 years before, she's remembering them all as being very close friends. And Jerry Schilling also remembers potlucks, picnics, hunting frogs, and target shooting with firearms. So he remembers all the same stuff as the others, except he also remembers hunting frogs. Now, Charlie Hodge, he said that that was where we had an awful lot of fun, and Elvis loved to get out. He'd wear a big old jacket, a Western jacket, and his cowboy hat. And they would ride horses all over the property. Picnics were frequent. The girls all got along pretty good. Now, if everybody on this ranch, at least the Elvis friends that are on the ranch, Charlie's the only one that's not married. Like everybody else that's coming to the ranch, well, George Klein is not married, but he's with the woman that he will marry. And that will be within a couple of years. So it's coming up soon. Although why he doesn't do it right here with all the others, that is an interesting question, right? But he didn't. And and one of the names that we've not seen come up at all, and I have no idea whether he was there or not, we've seen Red West come up. Now we know Red West is married. And tomorrow, or in a very soon-to-be episode, I'll show you a picture of what Red West's wife looked like. And if you thought that Joe's wife, Joni, was beautiful, wait until you see Red's wife. But we know he was out at the ranch sometimes. He's been mentioned. But what about Sonny? Now, Sonny's not married yet. Sonny's weddings, Elvis famously pays for later. But Sonny hasn't been mentioned in any of these stories. It's only these married people that are here. Except for Charlie. And maybe that's because Charlie always has a place wherever Elvis is. From the moment that Charlie and Elvis got together on the ship over to Germany, they've been inseparable. Charlie sometimes goes out on his own. He goes out at least once. And they didn't come back together right away from the army. Charlie had to come and join them at Graceland. So Charlie's life sometimes takes him away, but he's very connected to Elvis, and Elvis is very connected to him. And even Priscilla was always very fond of Charlie. And Colleen's saying that it sounds like it was so much fun, and having all your friends with you made it even better. I think that's exactly true. That's exactly what was happening, Colleen. Now, this hunting bow that we see on the screen, this hunting bow was used on the Circle G Ranch in the late 60s. And this is what Billy Smith has to say about it. The bow belonged to Elvis Presley, who gave it to his uncle, Travis Smith, who is Billy Smith's father. Travis used the bow to shoot fish from the lake on the Circle G. Elvis loved the ranch very much and tried many new adventures while there. He bought house trailers for his group, and they all stayed at the ranch while in Memphis. The Circle G Ranch was home for Billy, Joe, Danny, and Joey when they were not in California with Elvis. The ranch, located in Walls, Mississippi, still holds many good memories for them. Some of the home movies were taken on the ranch. Billy Smith, Elvis's cousin, August 20th, 1989. So that's something that Billy wrote, remembering the Circle G Ranch and this bow in particular, that has special memories for Billy because it's not just Elvis's bow. His father impressed Elvis with this bow. So it wasn't just Elvis's bow, it wasn't just his father's bow, which would be enough, to make it special to Billy. But Travis was able to do something with this bow that Elvis was not able to do, and it was impressive to Elvis, and he gave him this bow. But one of the new things that he was trying out was archery. Now, I'm sure they were shooting more than just the fish in the lake. I'm sure they had a lot of targets set up, just like they were doing the skeet shooting with the firearms. So this was another outdoor, manly kind of adventure that Elvis wanted to participate in. Now, he'd been in some westerns, including Flaming Star by this point, and perhaps some of those sparked his interest in archery because they would often feature Native Americans with bows and arrows. Or maybe it just came up at the time. It was popular in the late 60s as an outdoor activity. So somewhere along the line, somebody said, hey, let's get a bow and start target shooting. And he was in because they were on this ranch. They had all this room. This is one of the things you could do on a ranch. And all these things that they're doing, this is all part of the mythic ideal of fellowship, where Elvis's fame has dissolved into shared meals and muddy boots. The Circle G has become a commune, like Priscilla hinted at earlier, but it's a commune of memory. They're all sharing these wonderful, what they all know to be limited memories. This is a time-limited deal. It's not going to last forever. Priscilla's pregnancy proves that in 9 months, things are going to change, whether they're still on the ranch or not. And the movies only last a few months each, so those are going to change too. But at this moment, they're all together, they're all happy, they're all building memories that will last for the rest of their lives. And that's what Billy just told us about this bow, that these memories have lasted his entire life. Now, how did Colonel Parker feel about Elvis spending all this time on the ranch? We've already seen that Elvis missed some work time because he needed to recharge before he went back to do clam bake. And that caused some probably consternation for the Colonel. It definitely caused some work. He had to smooth things over and then redo all the logistics. A lot of logistics just to move an Elvis from place to place, let alone getting him into the machinery that it takes to make the movie. And Colleen's saying that Elvis's laugh would keep her laughing. And Pat's sure that Elvis was a lot of fun. I'm sure it was. I'm sure the entire time was great. And it had to be because these guys were willing to stay, even though Elvis is banging on their door at the crack of dawn or before, telling them all they got to get up, because we got to get the day going. You know, these animals aren't going to wait. But how did Colonel Parker feel about all this? Well, we don't know how Colonel Parker felt about it because he didn't really tell anyone. But he did send Elvis a gift. And that gift may have expressed his feelings about Elvis spending time on the ranch. And Jerry Schilling tells us about the gift that the Colonel sent Elvis. Jerry Schilling says, "These little horses that the Colonel sent Elvis, like Shetland ponies, and me and Richard Davis were trying to stay on them, riding them bareback and falling. We had a lot of fun." The Colonel sent Elvis miniature horses, small, tiny horses. So I don't know what the message in that was. You know, he had the room for animals. He seemed to like horses. The Colonel has sent him some very interesting horses, but these obviously are not the caliber of horses that Elvis has been cultivating at this point. This could be a very expensive way to show some irony or sarcasm, poking a little bit of fun at Elvis with these miniature horses. It would be in Colonel Parker's character to do that, and not just being mean. Elvis did similar things to the Colonel. And we'll look at that at some point, but the Colonel didn't so much like getting gifts, and Elvis would send him some extravagant gifts from time to time that I believe Elvis knew full well the Colonel wouldn't really be happy with, that they would be slightly more of a burden than they were a gift. So I think that was a bit of a back and forth that they had together, and I think this is the Colonel's way of saying, you got me on this one, have fun, we'll get it all worked out. And do whatever you need to do on this ranch so that when you come back off of it, we can get back to work. But he may have meant something far more sinister. But whatever he meant, it was expensive. These Shetland ponies weren't cheap. So for a man who a lot of people believe was all about the money, this would have been a very expensive prank or insult, or very subtle insult, or whatever it was. If it was a message of some kind, it was a very expensive message, which would be out of character for the Colonel. Pat's saying that, boy, I wish I knew Elvis back then. And that Parker didn't like it. And Colleen's agreeing that Parker didn't like anything unless Elvis was working. And then Pat's asking about the gift, but now we've got to the gift. So there's a slight delay between the time that I get your guys' chats or you hear me back. And Marion's agreeing that time with Elvis would never have been boring. And that she's always wondered how many things Elvis did in his short life. And Pat believes that Elvis was way too generous. And Carolyn saying that looking at Elvis never gets old. He was stunning. And now let's take a look at something that Elvis wore. This is a shirt and a vest combo thing. Blue, And you notice that the buttons on the shirt match the buttons on the vest. So this was bought as a piece, as an ensemble. Elvis personally wore this. And the reason that I'm showing this shirt, I don't know exactly when he wore it. It would have been sometime in the 60s. But the purpose of this shirt is to introduce Richard Davis. There are some pictures of Richard Davis, but there's not a lot. But what's important to remember about Richard Davis is that he provided security and he was a valet for Elvis. And what is a valet? Well, it's somebody who takes care of somebody else's clothes, basically. They make sure that the clothes are washed, that they're hung, that they're in good shape, that they're ready to be worn, that they're laid out. They sometimes assist in dressing, make sure that his collar's turned down in the back, make sure that his shoes are shined, that none of these buttons are missing or frayed in any way. Kind of to be to Elvis what Gladys had always been when he was a child with his clothes. And what Richard Davis said was that among my many duties for Elvis was valet, taking care of Elvis's wardrobe. This blue shirt with the attached corduroy vest was a shirt that belonged to Elvis and one that he wore a lot. Elvis bought this shirt at Lansky Brothers here in Memphis, where he shopped most of his life. The shirt was given to me by Elvis Presley. Here we can see the Lansky tag that proves it is indeed from Lansky Brothers in Memphis. And here at the ranch, Elvis, he's not wearing clothes like this because he's stepped out of the spectacle and into embodied simplicity. He's traded the glitter of Graceland for the dust of Mississippi, and he's cast himself as foreman, cowboy, and communal host. He's reclaiming his soul. These are ritual acts of reclamation. And he is reclaiming his soul and his time, his life. He's recharging, and he's going to decide what he's going to do in the future. Now, we know that Alan was the foreman, Alan Fortas. And we've heard Alan Fortas talk about the Circle G. We know he was the foreman, and we know that Elvis kept Ralph Boucher, who managed daily operations of the cattle ranch before Elvis bought it. We know that Elvis kept him employed. So he was running the cows. There's a whole business of just running the cows. So that's what Ralph is doing. Alan is in charge of everything. He's making sure that Ralph has what he needs, and whoever else is employed has what they need, as well as that they are all accomplishing the tasks that are before them. So another person that's there is Earl Pritchett, and he's maintaining the grounds and the equipment, and that's Donna Presley's father. So we've got the grounds and the equipment, we've got the cattle, we've got a guy that's doing the paperwork and making sure everybody's got what they need. That's Alan. But who's taking care of the horses? Well, that's a guy named Mike McGregor. And this is Mike McGregor that you see on screen. He's older here than he was during the Circle G days. But even at the time of the Circle G, He was married to the woman that's sitting next to him. Her name is Barbara. And Mike became close with Elvis. And you might remember a picture we saw several episodes ago where Elvis was on horseback outside of the barn. And you could see the muddy, churned up field in front of him, surrounded by the fence that kept the cattle in the barn. And there was a guy in a cowboy hat standing next to him. Well, that guy was Mike McGregor. So Mike taught Elvis about horses, and Mike was a great leather worker. So Elvis fans from the late 70s through the 80s and into the 90s, even into the early 2000s, they'll remember Mike because he made Elvis-style belts that were like the belts that he made for Elvis. So he made some different types of leather work for Elvis, but belts were one of them, several different belts, as well as handmade jewelry. He would make kind of a country western jewelry. And Elvis really liked it. And he sold this to fans through the 80s and the 90s. And this is how he supported himself and his wife, as well as, you know, all of his other skills, like taking care of horses. Always a call for people who know how to do that. And in the next episode, we're going to get to learn about Mike a lot more. But we've come to the end of our time today together. So, like I've been doing on the last few episodes, I'm going to go ahead and go out on a song. And I want to thank all of you for showing up today to share this story with me. And for your response to the music videos that I've released recently. I do have a playlist out there of music videos that you guys can access. You know what? Let me take a moment here and find that link so that I can post it here in the chat for anybody that wants it. And this playlist is my songs mixed with rare Elvis tracks that you may not have heard. Marion's already told me there's at least one of them that she hasn't heard. There's only a handful of songs right now. But as I add more of my own songs, I'll be adding more of Elvis's unknown tracks. They're not unknown, but they're kind of rare. They're out there. They're here on the platform on YouTube. A lot of people have difficulty finding them and maybe have never ever run across them before. So I thought that would be a fun way to build a playlist that you guys can then just click on, and it will play through all these songs that I hope that you love. And until I see you all again next time, you all keep on taking care of business.
Midnight lights, rhinestone fire, Arabian suit, burning with desire. He hit the stage like thunder rolls. Vegas shook and the story unfolds. Charlie's birthday, crowd went wild. He cracked a joke and sang with style. But just before he sang Hurt So Deep, he stopped the show and made us weep. He gave away his heart, not just a song, diamonds and gold, where the love belongs. Rings and shades from the man backstage. He healed the broken, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart. in hand, the man stepped near. Elvis smiled, the crowd could hear. Thanks to you, we raised the light. 17,000 hearts took flight. Then back behind the velvet door, he gave away a little more. Music ring, a boxcar shine, a suit that held his sacred time. He gave away his heart, not just a song, diamonds and gold, where the love belongs. Rings and shapes from the man backstage. He healed the broken, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I saw it all that night. He didn't need applause to know his worth. He gave away his soul in Vegas mirth. Not just a king, but something more. A man who knew what hearts were for. Gave away his heart, not just a soul. Pieces of love where the brave belong. Ritual gifts from the man backstage. He saved the hurting, hid the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I'll never be the same. I was there, I saw the rings, I saw the light. Gave away his heart, and it burned so bright.